Hello everybody. So this is going to be a quick video over independent groups design. So these are designs in which we're trying to compare between groups. All right, so let's jump right in. I think it's a cool looking visual aid here. You know, I'm a dork. Every now and then you get bored with the same old PowerPoint design, so you like to add some flair. I'm a touch concerned that I had too much flair with this one. Anyway, moving on. Hello computer. All right, so what are independent designs, independent groups designs? So again, these are designs in which we're trying to compare between groups. All right, sometimes you'll see these referred to as differential designs. All right, so maybe a way to help think about that is that independent groups designs are designs in which we're specifically looking for differences between groups. That's why part of the reason why they're sometimes referred to as differential designs. Now, in general, we've got three broad types of independent groups designs. We've got random groups design, matched groups design, and natural groups design. So let's jump right into the first one there. With the random groups design, we are randomly assigning people to our groups. Random groups design. So, you know, the example we have here, let's say that we're trying to randomly assign, let's say we're, you know, trying to look at how self-esteem affects the retention of information, right? So we want to manipulate self-esteem. So we can randomly assign participants to a condition in which, let's say, we bolster their self-esteem, and randomly assign other people to a control where, you know, we're leaving their self-esteem alone. Now, randomly assigning people to these groups has the advantage of making sure that things like their pre-existing self-esteem, their pessimism, pre-existing ability to retain knowledge or retain information, it makes sure that these kinds of pre-existing subject variables or individual differences don't have an effect, that they don't provide an alternative explanation for the differences between our conditions. And so this is a true experimental design, right? Because we've manipulated an IV, we're manipulating self-esteem, and we're balancing our groups. We're using random assignment to balance our groups. So we're making sure that those qualities of our participants are roughly the same when averaged across each group. So on average, each group, the control condition and the self-esteem bolstering condition, have roughly the same pre-existing self-esteem, roughly the same pre-existing pessimism, roughly the same pre-existing ability to comprehend information. So that way, you know, after we manipulate their self-esteem, then we measure their reading comprehension, we can pretty confidently say, well, if we find a difference between these two groups, that yeah, it was the effect of self-esteem on reading comprehension, because pre-existing ability to comprehend information, pre-existing self-esteem, pre-existing anything was balanced across the groups. And so with a random groups design, we can make a really strong case for causality. Now, sometimes we don't have enough participants for random assignment to work. And in those situations, random groups designs don't work. All right, so what do? Well, instead we use a matched groups design. A matched groups design is when we have participants complete a battery of measures, and then we pull participants from, based on those measures, we pull participants from our sample and assign them to condition in such a way that we know that each condition is, or each group is roughly equivalent on their pre-existing self-esteem, their ability to comprehend information, their pessimism, you know, what have you. So now typically we only match participants on variables that are relevant to our hypotheses. Trying to balance participants on literally everything can get very costly in terms of time and resources. So again, if you have access to a big enough sample size, randomly assign. It does the job. But if you don't have a lot of participants, matched group design is a good alternative. Now, there are some times that we care about differences between pre-existing groups. All right, we might care about differences between the sexes, about differences between people who are older versus younger, differences between Republicans and Democrats, or liberals and conservatives, differences between different ethnicities, differences between different genders, difference between different cultures. Well, when we care about these differences and we want to look for differences between those pre-existing groups, we do what's called a natural groups design. But we've got to be careful about natural groups designs, because they are a differential design. Yeah, we're looking for differences between groups, but because it looks so much like an experiment, like a true experiment, like a random groups design, it's very alluring, it's very tempting to, if you find a difference between groups, to say, oh, look, it's the, what were some of those? It's age that's having the effect. It's the political identification that's having the effect. It's the ethnicity that's having the effect. It's sex, it's gender, it's culture, whatever. It's very alluring. It's very tempting to make a causal statement from a natural groups design, but it's not appropriate to do that. All right, why? Well, there's no random assignment. You can't assign people to these groups. I can't change, we researchers cannot change a participant's sex. We can't change their age. We can't change their political identification. We can't change their ethnicity. So we can't randomly assign them to these groups. All right. So there's no random assignment. So yeah, you're thinking, well, we're already looking for the differences between the groups. Yes, but there may be a whole suite of individual differences, subject variables that are correlated with those group differences that now get caught up in those groups. And so you don't really know if it's the group membership that's causing the effect, or if it's one of these many other correlated variables. Because you can't manipulate group membership, you can't make sure that it's the only thing changing. All those correlated variables are also changing, and so you can't control it. So with a natural groups design, you can't control a lot of the things that you can with a true experiment. So a natural groups design is not a true experiment. It's what we call a quasi-experiment. It is a differential design, right? Because you're looking for differences between groups, but because of the weaknesses I just discussed, you can't make a causal argument with it. So why do we use them? Well, we use them for the same reason we use correlational designs. Even though you can't pin down with absolute certainty whether or not something causes another, and as you get more into this research methods, you know that you're never really able to pin down with absolute certainty, but you can have a lot of confidence and you can have a lot of evidence. Well, natural groups design can start you down the path towards getting that evidence. All right, so it can start your pursuit of evidence for a causal claim. All right, and do enough of them over time, institute enough other kinds of experimental control, other kinds of methodological control, other kinds of statistical control, you can build a pretty decent, pretty strong argument for causation, especially if you replicate it many times. But you're never able to do it quite as easily as you can with other kinds of differential designs, like the matched groups designs and the random groups designs. All right, guys, that's it for this video over independent groups designs. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. If not, then I hope you find this video useful, and I hope you have a great one. I'll see you later.